Hey, it's Chris, Liege of Games. Deck building is a really easy mechanic, right? Super easy, anyone can do it, requires no thought, requires no effort, and they're all the same, right? Oh, let's stop on that last note because what I'm going to be talking to you today about is Moonrakers from IV Games. Why is it a little bit different? Why should you have it on your radar? And what do you need to know about it to figure out whether or not it's right for you? Let's do this. So you've probably heard it, you've probably seen it elsewhere. I mean, it's another spacefaring game. It's another deck building game. Why would I have any interest in that? Because this is deck building done a slightly different way. If you're familiar with deck builders at all, I mean, the basic concept of a deck builder is, okay, I've got my cards, I draw them from my deck, I play all my cards, I see what I can do, I do everything that I can, and then rinse and repeat and just kind of go through the motions. And that's the big criticism, right, of deck builders in a nutshell, is that they offer the same core experience with a different flavor or a different wrapping on the presence outside, right? Well, Moonrakers here is taking a different spin on that core concept to make your gamer brain tingle in a slightly different way. Well, so what do I mean by that? Let's talk about that for a second. Why is this one? What is it doing that's causing that? The core concept is already slightly different than most deck builders because it alters how you go about playing your cards. In most deck builders, order doesn't have a significant difference in terms of the cards you're playing, right? You're counting up your currencies in one of the various currencies that you have, you know, whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever it may be that you're trying to get in order to buy from a central marketplace. Well, the idea of the central marketplace is no different in this game, but the aspects and the nuances of it are. That's why, and it's part of the reason that it gives a different vibe already from the get-go. The interesting aspect is the decks themselves are often, or they often feel like they are overshadowed by the other elements that are introduced as you are playing, whether those are special abilities, engine upgrades, part upgrades, or even crew that you are hiring along the way to mercenary on your ship. And that's because the core of it is just that. They're just basic elements, basic cards that have slightly different values on them. But how you use them in the combination of the setting in these missions that you will go on is what sets it apart from all of the rest. We are used to deck building where it is head to head. We are used to deck building where it is fully cooperative, where it is you versus the game. But this is a different spin on things. This is an amalgam, a combination, a mixed up, scrambled version of both of those in a way put together. Because you can go on missions together. Missions that you choose from a plethora of said center marketplace, like I mentioned before, of varying difficulty and requirements based on how you choose to specialize your ship in the first place, which means that specialization really, really does make a difference. And whether or not you choose to negotiate, to cooperate, to assist, is a true make it or break it when most deck building games are, to be fair, as someone who self-professedly loves deck builders, often can devolve into multiplayer solitaire. It's true. I mean, I love Aeon's End as the comparable game that is in my collection that I own pretty much everything of. But it is essentially a coordinated multiplayer solitaire against the AI-driven boss. How much of the reward from the quest are you willing to give up to entice those that you are dragging along with you potentially in order to defeat it? High risk, high reward. Because not only are the cards you're playing available to you in your hand, but they also might not be available to you. Because unlike other deck builders where, again, the core crux of it is I draw as many cards as I can, I play as many cards as I can, the actions that you have, the cards that you can play in the first place are limited in number because you are given 2 actions. An action being playing a card. You have to play another card that gives you more actions to be able to play more cards. And so on and so forth. And so having enough cards of enough color to complete said mission is actually a very tactical challenge when it comes down to it. With those missions, with the rewards that can be split however you choose to do so when you are trying to siren call your opponents to be on your temporary side, is a different spin on things. Again, the deck itself being much less asymmetric, but how you choose to use it and utilize it, and how many of those cards you can actually get played on any given turn is highly variable, which is where the specialization, the customization of your ship really, really, really matters. Because if you have a ship that gives you extra actions, well, then you can focus on other areas. But if you have other avenues of battle or negotiation emphasized, you can all of a sudden become a significant boon to your enemies to be able to wiggle your way in on their quests in terms of the need because they have specialized elsewhere. So it's not, so it becomes essentially the opposite of mutually assured destruction. It's mutually assured cooperation based on need, which is a very intriguing concept when you're talking deck building. Now, I've also played this solo. I played this solo to learn it. And most deck builders, when you play solo, deck building is not a great mechanic that lends itself well to true solo play. It lends itself well, the mechanic as a whole, to multi-handed solo play. But I would not say overwhelmingly it is a great solo game, because often in these games, difficulty does not scale nearly as well at higher player counts. But I will argue that this is a fun game to play at solo. This is one of the more fun games, as I have been doing this channel, to learn as a solo game in order to play it elsewhere. It is very feasible, it is very reasonable, and I had a very good time doing it. In fact, I almost feel like it takes away some of the semi-cooperativeness, which again can be a hit or miss for people, and it just allows you to play when you want to use the semi-cooperativeness from a ghost player or not, giving you more freedom to choose. It makes it harder as well, because there is a very limited supply to choose from, but it works beautifully as well. So what are people going to like about this? Of all of the things I've mentioned, what is something that people will go, yeah, this is different? Yes, this is different because of those elements. It's going to force you to be very, very selective in when, how, and in what order. And if you like that but haven't been able to get that out of your deck builders in other aspects, this one is going to do it more than anything else in your collection. This is not just to lay them all down and weep, sort of poker style, right? I mean, I'm looking at you, DC deck builder, Marvel Legendary deck builder, most of the time even Aeon's End to some extent. And I love that game, but it is not as, I'm going to have to pick and choose. It's more blast them all and see what sticks. So if you're looking for that, it does an amazing job of that. Frustratingly well sometimes, because you're just not going to have any of the action cards drawn or any of the actions available to you, and you're just going to not be able to do much on your turn. And that's okay, if you like that. The other aspect is, the engine parts and the crew that you're hiring are, they're asymmetrically different. The customization, the optimization, the mitigation that comes along with all of those, it really makes you feel like you are making meaningful decisions on how the rest of the game is going to be played out from you. These are not things that are just going to be trifling. They are things that can actively make a difference without being too overpowered, and giving you ways to really focus your concentration on how you want your vessel and your deck to work in synergy. Because it is not just, one of them is the main element and the other one is sort of window dressing or icing on the cake, right? They are working hand in hand. And so how you build one, it needs to synergize with how you are building the other. Otherwise, you are going to flounder in terms of your capacity for scoring the end game's prestige points in order to win in the first place by completing missions. What aren't people going to like? Why aren't people going to like this game? Because again, like I said, this is not as simple as buy and play, rinse and repeat. This is a next level deck builder. This is going to require more thought, more patience, and frankly speaking, a little bit more complexity overhead wise in terms of the management of those synergistic parts than a lot of people may want from your more streamlined, albeit also shorter, potentially, deck builders. Not that this is long by any means, but several of the other aforementioned deck builders can be potentially significantly shorter because of how the hands are played. Like I mentioned, the difference is in that key mechanic. The other thing that you might not like, as I mentioned, is you can recruit people to go on a quest with you and they can betray you, and you can not be able to necessarily mitigate or even complete the quest, even if you want to, if someone just decides to kind of, you're just SOL. And so there is a dynamic of cutthroatness to go along with this at the same time. And if you're not looking for that, if you do not like the thought of something along the lines, because I'm not going to say it's exactly the same as semi-cooperative in the traditional sense that we use it with board games, a la sort of a Dead of Winter or BSG or something like that, because it is, but it's not. This game is also not going to appeal to you on those lines or those aspects as well. So overall, final thoughts. Where are things at having now experienced Moonrakers? This is a solid addition if you're looking for something from a different spin on the deck building mechanic, because I don't really have anything else, like I mentioned, that replicates this. And especially with the upcoming expansions announced, I think it becomes actually even more intriguing. Because for me personally, at first, I was sort of on the trade list. I sort of was like, I like it, but I don't love it. But it's really grown on me the more I've thought about it and the more I've played it. It has grown significantly on me, and I think it's one of those games that's going to get a few modular expansions. And it's all of a sudden going to take Marvel Legendary to being, it's just Marvel Legendary to like you add a few of those expansions and you go, oh yeah, this is actually, or Dominion, this is actually, yeah. And that's how I look at Moonrakers if you're on the edge right now. Not that you need them, because it stands on its own 2 feet alone. This is a very complete game. I don't feel like, with the argument going the reverse angle for a second here, Marvel Legendary, the base game, I would never recommend for people to buy alone. Never. Same thing with like DC deck building. Same thing even with maybe Aeon's End. I'd recommend like War Eternal and maybe like a few of the small ones to go along with it, right? This one, I'd say you can recommend this one alone on the base game itself. But I would say it's similar to those others in the same aspect that if it gets something else in addition to it, it all of a sudden elevates it more like Space Base, which I'm a big fan of. It makes it Space Base and the Shy Pluto expansion, if you know what I mean, where it didn't add significantly new stuff. So it made it more from like an 8 to a 9 in that aspect. And I'm not using that as like I don't rate my games in terms of numbers, but that's what the comparison wise, it takes a very good game that I'm always happy to play and make it an even better game that I'm even more happy to play now. There you go. That's Moonrakers, IV Games. Pros, cons, overviews, everything else in between. That's all I got. Thumb it if you like it. Let's YouTube know. I appreciate if you smash it. And if you want to see more, let me know. As always, I'm open for discussion. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on this and how you fall on the deck building as a whole. I'm a big fan. So there you go. Stay classy. Have a great day. I'll see you around.